So we're going to get started. Welcome everyone and good morning. My name is Elizabeth Aloni and I'm with Schneps Media. Schneps Media is the largest local news outlet. We publish over 70 newspapers, magazines, websites, webinars, podcasts, and events across Manhattan, Queens, Brooklyn, the Bronx, Long Island, Westchester, and beyond. So thank you for being here. We are really honored to have the law firm of Barscsh McGarry, the lawyers for 9/11, to speak with us today. And I would love to introduce each of them. So first of all, I want to introduce Michael Barasch. He is the managing partner of Barscsh McGarry, and they are the lawyers for the 9/11 community. Since 2004, Barscsh McGarry Law Firm fought to reopen the Victim Compensation Fund, VCF. And in 2019, Michael and several attorneys and staff made dozens of trips to Washington, D.C. to secure the permanent extension and full funding of the $10 billion VCF. The firm now represents 20,000 responders, downtown residents, office workers, students, and teachers who've been sickened by the 9/11 toxins. He and his partners will discuss the importance of registering for the free World Trade Center health program and how to get the compensation you deserve. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
I'd also like to introduce you to Lee London. Lee London is a partner and the managing attorney for the 9/11 Victim Compensation Fund practice at the law firm of Barscsh McGarry. He works directly with the first responders and survivors of the terrible terrorist attacks that took place on September 11, 2001 at the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Lee has been a relentless advocate for the 9/11 community, but not only representing his clients in court, but also in government in working to pass legislation with Congress for the 9/11 community. Thank you for being here, Lee.
Thank you so much.
Dana Cohen, thanks for being here. She's a partner at Barscsh McGarry, a Brooklyn native and magna cum laude graduate of Brooklyn Law School. Dana has been at the firm for her entire career. Dana is a distinguished appellate lawyer. She's also co-chair of the deceased claims team at the firm. Together with Dom Penson, she oversees all aspects of claims filed with the Victim Compensation Fund on behalf of estates and surviving families.
Thank you.
Dom Penson is a founding partner of Barscsh McGarry. Since the firm's inception more than 25 years ago, Dom has handled its most complex cases and served as its lead trial and appellate attorney. As co-chair of the deceased claims team along with Dana Cohen, he oversees all aspects of claims filed with the Victim Compensation Fund on behalf of estates and surviving families. Thanks for being here, Dom.
Good morning. Thank you, Elizabeth.
And last but certainly not least is Liam Lynch, who is a safety and health specialist with NYCOSH, that's the New York Committee for Occupational Safety and Health. He conducts an array of worker safety and health trainings for unions and worker organizations in the New York City area. He also leads NYCOSH's work with the 9/11 community, conducting outreach and support for the WTC health program. His time working in the New York City labor movement started in DC 37 Safety and Health Department before joining NYCOSH. He has an MA in Labor Studies from the City University of New York and is an active member of the United Steelworkers Local 4406. Thank you so much for being here, Liam. And I'm now going to turn it over to Michael.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for making those introductions. I thought that would expedite things a little bit. And I want to welcome everybody for attending today. Look, there's so much information that we want to give you, but what we don't want to do is overwhelm you. So as Elizabeth said before we started, if you have any specific questions that you want to ask privately, we welcome you to do it. I mean, all of us give out our private cell phone numbers all the time, but probably the best way to reach us privately, unless you want to submit a question during the presentation today, is just go to 911victims.org, and there'll be a chat page that pops up, and you can fill in your question and your name, and we will get back to you. That's one thing we're really passionate about doing. We're gonna start today by showing you a short 3-minute video just to give you an agenda today. Then the five of us are going to speak about the World Trade Center Health Program and the Victim Compensation Fund for about a half hour. And then we'll throw it open to questions. We know your time is precious. The last thing we want to do is overwhelm you, but there is so much information. And the most important thing I think all of us want is help us spread the word. There are so many people in the 9/11 community who still aren't aware of the free health care and the compensation that they're entitled to. The most common reason is that they think it's for first responders only. And while we, of our 20,000 clients, of course, most of them are firefighters, cops, sanitation workers, construction workers, volunteers, there were 300,000 office workers in Lower Manhattan on 9/11 and during the 8 months that followed. There were 25,000 students and another 25,000 teachers. All these people are eligible. Oh, and let's not forget the residents, the downtown residents, and of course the office workers, if I didn't say that already. So we're going to try to give you this information. Let's start with the video. Matt, would you launch the video, and then we'll come back to you on the other side of it.
The first thing that I hear from the non-first responder community in Lower Manhattan is, look, I'm sick, but I don't deserve anything. I'm not a first responder. I just lived here. I just studied here. I just went to school here. I just raised a family here. Your presence here was an act of courage and resilience. The first responders, I'm in awe. But I also am in great awe of those who came back to a war-torn neighborhood that was clearly toxic. We knew it, but you stayed anyway, and you allowed this area to grow and to become the hub. But it's your courage and your resilience that brought this place back. So please, I urge you, access what you are owed.
Over the last decade, we have all fought very hard so that everyone has access to the health care that they need. It is very important that every community member who lived anywhere south of Houston understands that you are covered, are part of the group of people that have guaranteed health care if you have a 9/11 related disease.
I was on my way to work when the first plane hit. I was working for Goldman Sachs. I actually worked for them for a total of 21 years. I always thought that those programs were geared for the firemen and the police officer, but I'm one of the victims of that.
So we have taken on, with all of these advocates here, the task of trying to get everyone to understand that they have rights, and it is imperative that they sign up.
My law firm represents over 15,000 people in the 9/11 community. And the majority right now are first responders, but every single day we hear from more and more survivors because we're doing this outreach. There's a reason why my firm takes all this so personally. I have 6 young people who work for me who have lost a parent or a spouse as a result of World Trade Center toxins. 9 people in my law firm, including me, are cancer survivors. The information you get from us is going to be compassionate, and it's our pleasure to help you. All right, thank you, Matt. Matt, let's start with the map. Let's let everybody see what Senator Gillibrand was referring to. And by the way, there's a good reason that most of that video was shot at a seminar we did at Borough Manhattan Community College last September. Remember when we actually used to meet in person? That was really a thing. People would come, fill up an auditorium. You can't do that right now, so that's why we're doing the webinar. But out of the 1,000 people who showed up that day, most of them students, but many of the teachers, many of them were janitors and people who worked in their kitchens. And it also attracted people from Pace University, New York Law School, and there were 12 public schools south of Canal Street. Well, we ended up signing up 650 people into the health program. And Liam will talk about the health program in a minute. But if you look on the left side of this map, you're going to see all the people that we represent. People, I mentioned Borough of Manhattan Community College. We represent dozens of former students from Stuyvesant High School, dozens of people from Chinatown, American Express, Citibank, American AIG, Goldman Sachs, we represent 123 people with cancer. And then for the Staten Island landfill, it was mostly the police, of course, and the sanitation workers who were there. But all these people, the 300,000 office workers, the 25,000 downtown residents, and the 50,000 former students and teachers, you are all eligible. And as our hero, Jon Stewart, said, and by the way, he really is our hero. He would hate it if he heard me say that, but without him, this legislation that we got passed last July, which extended the health program and the victim compensation fund until the year 2090, that's 70 more years, it never would have happened without Jon Stewart. Anyway, so I just wanted you to see the map. Liam will talk about, there's a distinction in the blue area for the health program, and everybody in this map, and whether you're in the blue area or in the yellow/orange area, you're eligible for the victim compensation fund. So one of our clients, Matt, if you'll go to the next slide, please. One of our clients was Detective James Zadroga. Jimmy was a 34-year-old, highly decorated police officer with the NYPD. After 9/11, he spent dozens and dozens of hours around the perimeter, also at the Fresh Kill landfill. He developed a horrible pulmonary illness called pulmonary fibrosis. It's also known as black lung disease. Jimmy died at age 34. They did an autopsy in New Jersey, and in his lung tissue, they discovered ground glass, asbestos, chromium, lead, benzene. These were all known carcinogens. So as tragic as Jimmy's death was, at least it gave us, and it gave doctors in the medical community, the medical evidence that was needed to link all these pulmonary illnesses and what is now 68 cancers. And you don't have to prove that your respiratory illness or your cancer was caused by your exposure. There is a presumption. And in a little bit, we'll tell you a little bit more about the law, but it's non-adversarial. You do need, of course, to prove, number one, that you were there, that you were either working or living or volunteering somewhere to be eligible for the health care. It has to be below Houston Street. To be eligible for the victim compensation fund, it must be below Canal Street. You need to have 2 people sign an affidavit for you. That's it. So another student can sign for you. Another teacher could sign for you. Somebody you work with at your office at AIG or at Goldman Sachs can sign for you. It's really, and as I said, it's non-adversarial, but you do need these affidavits. Pictures are helpful, but in this day and age of Photoshop, anybody can show a picture of themselves anywhere. So the government, which runs this, the Department of Justice runs the Victim Compensation Fund, and National Institute of Health runs the World Trade Center Health Program. Those are the 2 programs that were created when Congress passed the Zadroga Health and Compensation Act. So you can see these cancers. Lee, would you take us through some of these cancers and tell them what we're seeing the most of?
Sure, not a problem. So in the 9/11 community, and the biggest part about why the Victim Compensation Fund was extended till 2090 is the fact that there is still hundreds and thousands of people that don't even realize that they qualify for the Victim Compensation Fund and the World Trade Center Health Program. You know, anytime I signed up a Goldman Sachs employee who came down with a very severe cancer, they didn't realize, wait, I thought this was just for cops and firefighters. I didn't realize I qualify also. They worked in the zone from 9/11/2001 to May 30th of 2002. They breathed in the same dust. And the reason why we bring up skin cancer probably 4 times throughout this presentation is because people don't even realize skin cancer is covered under the bill. So when you have basal cell, squamous cell, melanoma, these skin cancers are much more aggressive in the 9/11 community than they are, you know, if you weren't exposed to these toxics and dust. So other than skin cancer, prostate cancer, breast cancer, thyroid cancer, the skin next to your thyroid right here is the thinnest. That's why survivors, students, teachers, mailmen, they were getting sick and diagnosed with these horrible severe cancers and didn't even realize they were by these programs. And that's why we've lobbied so hard to get this fund extended, because we see day to day how these conditions affect us, and especially with everything in the world. Yep.
Yeah, Lee, I just wanted to add one thing and clarify something. Yes, the government is looking at this 8-month period after 9/11. So you do not have to have been in the exposure zone on 9/11.
Exactly.
But let me just give you the parameters here. You either have to prove you were caught in the dust cloud, you were downtown on 9/11, or you spent 4 hours between September 11th, 2001 and September 15th. So that's just the first 4 days. If you can prove you were there for a total of 4 hours, you are eligible. And if you weren't there during that period of time, you need to show that you were there for 24 hours anytime during the month of September. So again, I know our office is just 2 blocks from Ground Zero. We didn't come back until October. And I'll explain how you're eligible if you were there in October. But for the first month, it was mostly the downtown residents and the responders, because so many of the office workers, like the people at my firm, left. So if you weren't there in September, you need to show that you were exposed for at least 80 hours anytime between 9/11 and May 30th of 2002. So that's just 2 full work weeks. And again, an affidavit from a coworker, an employment verification letter from your boss, that will suffice. So we're going to get into the fact that the Victim Compensation Fund actually pays tax-free money. The non-cancers, of course, are not considered as serious as the cancers, but in many cases, I mean, I'm an attorney. If I had asthma, I could keep working. As you heard in my presentation, I'm a cancer survivor. I can keep working. But many people, based on the job that they do, whether they're a first responder or a firefighter, for instance, with severe asthma, he loses his career. So in addition to compensation for pain and suffering, the government is giving money for lost income. So those illnesses on the right, well, they're only paying between $20,000 and $35,000. If they are disabling, the government will give you money for all your lost income for the rest of your life, minus whatever benefits you're receiving. So let's go to the next slide, please, Matt. Deadlines. So Dom, would you talk a little bit about the deadline and the fact that it's been extended and what normally happens?
Well, there are different deadlines depending upon what type of claim a person files. The VCF recognizes 2 kinds of claims. Dana and I will be chiefly speaking today about the deceased claims, but there are filing deadlines for all claims. For a deceased claim, the rule has changed for the moment. People have until July of next year, regardless of when somebody passed away as a result of a World Trade Center illness. Even if a person passed away 6-7 years ago, the family may file a claim today and will be able to file a claim anytime through July, I think it's 20 or 21 of next year. After that, we don't know exactly. In the past, the rule was that a family had to file within 2 years.
And that's the same, Dom, that's the same thing with somebody once they're certified with a cancer, they have exactly 2 years to register.
Okay. So, and we expect that that will be the rule again after this extension, this window that they created when they reauthorized the act. They created this window. When the window expires, we think the rule will go back to 2 years. But
I think you're right.
But for now, obviously, anybody who did not take advantage of the VCF for their family in the past, because they didn't know about the deadline, they didn't know that they had the right to file a VCF claim, may do so until July of next year.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we'll get back to the wrongful death issues in a moment. Can we go into the next slide, Matt? Yeah, we'd be a little insensitive if we didn't address the current health crisis. Before we went on, we were talking about this and how our careers have really been bookended by 9/11 on one side and today's health crisis on the other side. And it's a real tragedy that so many of our clients with underlying 9/11 respiratory illnesses, with compromised immune systems because of their cancer and the chemotherapy and radiation they had to endure, they are dying at a higher rate than many other people. And it's so heartbreaking for us to, I mean, we've already lost 25 clients due to COVID. So those of you who do have an underlying health problem, whether you've had cancer or respiratory problems, I urge you, listen to the CDC, wear a mask at all times, social distance, stay at home as much as possible until this thing passes. Next slide, please. Terrific. So I mentioned that when Congress passed the ZROGA Act, they created both the Victim Compensation Fund and the World Trade Center Health Program. And we are honored to have Liam with us today. Liam, would you please tell us about the health program?
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Michael. So like Michael said, when the ZROGA Act passed in 2010, it created two programs. So the World Trade Center Health Program, that is administered by NIOSH, and the Victim Compensation Fund that is administered by the Department of Justice. So the health program is treating 9/11 related conditions, and then the Victim Compensation Fund is that financial piece. They're related, but they have separate application processes. So the World Trade Center Health Program provides health screenings and treatment for responders and survivors. And I know that Michael and Lee have talked a little bit about the differences between responders and survivors, but first responders were anyone who volunteered in the Rescue, Recovery, and Cleanup Act. That includes volunteers from the Red Cross, construction workers, firefighters, police officers, and then survivors. So survivors are anyone who lived, worked, went to school, visited the area as a tourist on the day of 9/11. We're talking retail workers, cab drivers, office workers, residents. Those are all categorized as survivors. And so the World Trade Center Health Program, going to give a little bit of an overview, provides annual medical monitoring visits and treatment for conditions that the doctors in the program have certified as a 9/11 related condition. And there's over 100 different conditions that they have deemed related to 9/11 exposure, and about 68 or plus, they're adding conditions too, 68 cancers, but they're adding conditions all the time. So something that they may not cover today, they may cover in the future. The science will catch up and they can connect different conditions to 9/11. So it's very important that you're in the program, so that you can, even if you think that your condition may not be covered today, it might be covered in the future. But anyway, the World Trade Center Health Program covers medical tests, doctor visits, surgeries, prescription drugs at no cost. And they even provide benefits counseling. So we went over the conditions a little bit, but there's a lot of airway, digestive disorders that are covered. And then also mental health conditions, which is really important. These clinics in the World Trade Center Health Program have very comprehensive mental health care. Really, really fabulous programs. And so it's not just physical conditions, it's mental health as well. And for responders, there are about 7 clinics in the New York metro area that are part of the program. That includes North Shore, Mount Sinai, NYU, Stony Brook, Rutgers, out in New Jersey. But then there is a nationwide provider network that provides care in all 50 states. So as we speak right now, there are responders and survivors being treated and cared for across the country. So you do not have to live in New York State in order to receive care. We know a lot of people, the average age of a responder and survivor is increasing, right, as time goes on. So we know that people are retiring, and there's actually a pretty robust program and clinics down in Florida, Arizona, North Carolina, but all over. And I just want to highlight one thing about the eligibility. So for responders, the area is south of Canal Street, but also includes the Staten Island landfill, barge loading piers, the office of the chief medical examiner. But then for survivors, it's south of Houston Street, into a slight area of Brooklyn Heights as well. And so for survivors, the period of eligibility is 4 days between 9/11 and January, or 30 days between 9/11 and July 31st of 2002. And again, it's for anyone who lived, resided, attended school, cleanup worker, and other, worked with a lot of janitors, custodians that cleaned up the buildings in the surrounding area. We know that there was a lot of World Trade Center derived contaminants in the surrounding area. And they also have clinics in the New York metro area, but again, survivors can be treated in any state as well. So they are separate clinics that survivors and responders go to, but they receive the same care. One last thing I'm going to note is that in order to apply to the World Trade Center health program as a survivor, you have to feel that you are somehow sick or that you have a symptom of a 9/11 related condition, but that could be as simple as I can't sleep, I have anxiety, I have sleep apnea, and you have to write that on the application. For responders, they are eligible for an annual monitoring exam, regardless of whether they feel like they are sick or not. So that is the difference between responders and survivors in the health program. You have to get your condition certified in the health program in order to then complete your process in the VCF. So you have to be in the World Trade Center health program, get your condition certified in order to successfully file a claim with the VCF. So the two programs are related, but they have separate application processes.
So Liam, it's funny you say they're related. I always use the expression they work hand in hand.
Yes.
And they require the same proof, and it's not that hard to do, even though I know every year that goes by, so many witnesses are passing away tragically. But the health program will accept affidavits, so will the Victim Compensation Fund. And I wanted to just ask you something. Did you say, Liam, that this program is available to the survivors and to the responders at no cost?
No cost, free in the in the real world, but yes, free.
So can
at
you
no
explain
cost.
to me why, out of the 100,000 people so far who have registered in the health program, why have only 5% of the downtown office workers and residents applied so far?
I wish I could give a full answer to that. I'm not sure myself. I think that it's just partially lack of outreach and partially the confusion that they think that it's for just responders, and they don't want to take away anything from responders. And little do they know that this program was set up and built for them as well.
Right. I think you're 100% right. I think people were reluctant, or they did, if they knew about it, they were reluctant because they didn't want to take away from firefighters and cops. But now that it's been permanently extended and fully funded, you're not taking money away from them at all. I also wanted to, I'm glad you mentioned that the health program provides treatment for PTSD. So many of our clients, so many people we meet suffer from severe anxiety and depression. Yes, even 19 years later. And it's so important that you receive the treatment that, you, as Jon Stewart said, as Senator Gillibrand said, you are entitled to this. Take advantage of it. All right, let's just move back. I'm sure there'll be questions about the health program, but I have to say, Liam, I'm so touched that you were willing to do this for us. I can't tell you what a valuable asset NICOSH is in general, and you are in particular to the 9/11 community. So thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Michael.
All right, so Lee London, would you please tell everybody about the benefits of the Victim Compensation Fund once you are certified with a 9/11 illness by the health program.
Yes, no problem. And one thing I just wanted to add is one of the best factors of the World Trade Center Health Program, other than the free medical benefits for the rest of your life, is that you're with the experts in the field. I have so many clients that call me and say, I have an aggressive breast cancer. I worked in the zone at JP Morgan Chase, and now my private doctor is telling me it's not related. And it's the presumption. You need to go to experts in the field that are around other members of the 9/11 community, because these cancers and different diagnoses act differently. And if you go to your private doctor and they tell you it's not related, don't give up then. If you have the exposure and you were there during that time, ask questions. Join the World Trade Center Health Program. This is a benefit that will outlive all of us because of the fact of how horrible this dust was. Now moving towards the victim compensation fund. So when I explain to clients that on one end you have the World Trade Center Health Program, and on the other end, you have the Victim Compensation Fund. Both programs have been extended until 2090. And the best part about the Victim Compensation Fund are the different benefits available. So there are monetary awards for pain and suffering for your cancer. I've had many firefighters, cops, survivors, teachers that worked in the zone that taught mathematics, got diagnosed with severe cancer and couldn't complete their job anymore. 50-year-old teacher ready to work the next 20 years, we can make a loss of earnings claim for them with the Victim Compensation Fund. One of the biggest factors of the Victim Compensation Fund is out-of-pocket medical expenses, also directly related to a cancer, if you had, or non-cancer condition. So if you were in the exposure zone for the right amount of hours and you were diagnosed in 2006, and then all of a sudden you joined the Victim Compensation Fund today, all of your out-of-pocket medicals that weren't covered by insurance that you paid for, we can get reimbursed for you through the Victim Compensation Fund. Going back to the monetary awards for pain and suffering, nothing will make you whole again. That's what I always tell my clients. No amount of money is worth having these types of conditions. But the Victim Compensation Fund does award for non-cancerous conditions up to 20 to 90,000, skin cancer, basal cell, squamish to 90,000, and very severe cancers, going up to 250,000 to 340,000 based on severity. The best part about the Victim Compensation Fund is that you don't waive your future legal rights. So if you get diagnosed with asthma in 2015, and then in 2022, you get diagnosed with severe thyroid cancer, you can amend your claim for an increased award and keep moving forward. It's not like just you accept it now. The Victim Compensation Fund understands that many of these conditions will happen later. It's not about how you feel now. It's how you're going to feel 5 years from now, 10 years from now. That's why we encourage everybody who is in the exposure zone to join now, because you don't want to be dealing with this when things get tough and you have to leave your job and you're trying to handle these diagnoses. You want to be around experts and you want to be in this program already.
And Lee, if I can just mention that, that's even more important today with COVID-19, because these doctors at the health program, they know how to treat respiratory illnesses. And that's exactly what COVID-19 is. So again, access what you were entitled to. Lee, just one last question. The money that the 9/11 claimants get, are there any taxes on that money, on those rewards?
No, this is all tax-free. And when you go through this process, it's different for everybody. So with timing and so forth, but the Victim Compensation Fund, concerning clients that are terminal. And when I say if you have a financial expedite, or if all of a sudden you get diagnosed with a stage 4 condition, you've never joined this program before, the Victim Compensation Fund put in a terminal expedite process, which we do mostly once a week for our clients, just because of how severe this is. And the Victim Compensation Fund can give an award in less than 2 weeks. And it is an unbelievable program, because when you're going through this, you're going through chemo, radiation, you want to make sure your family is covered. You want to make sure that, that you are covered and your family is taken care of. And the Victim Compensation Fund really factors that in.
Lee, that's a great segue to our wrongful death team. Dom and Dana, would you please talk to us about that and explain, how does it feel, do you think, to someone who's dying, who knows they're going to die, to get an award and know that their family is financially taken care of.
Okay, thank you. Let me take a step back to the beginning of the presentation for the moment. Michael mentioned, and Lee reiterated it, Liam touched upon it, just how many people there were downtown below Canal Street on 9/11, and then between 9/11 and May 30, 2002, hundreds of thousands of people from all walks of life. And though it's awful in a way to think about this, the one thing we know about everybody, every one of us, because we were here too, every one of us who was down here on that day and afterwards, is one day we will all pass away. We will all pass away from something. And many of us will pass away from one of these 68 cancers that the NIH says has been linked to the toxic dust, or from one of the other illnesses, the pulmonary illnesses such as COPD or interstitial lung disease, these other terrible diseases that have been affecting the 9/11 community as a result of that dust. We know that. Which means that one day, for those of us who do pass away from these diseases, our families will be eligible for the substantial benefits that Lee described to you, and I will take them up now in a moment. But to answer your question, Michael, these benefits can provide they can never make up for the loss of our loved ones, but they can provide security, real security, when a head of the household or anyone else in the family, an important member of the household, passes away from one of these 9/11 illnesses. On the what we call the deceased side of the VCF, meaning with respect to the claims filed by families when somebody has passed away, in addition to the categories of damages that Lee described, the pain and suffering, lost earnings, those same categories apply to a deceased claim. In fact, if the person who passed away never filed a claim while they were alive, their family, in addition to filing a claim for, you can think of it as wrongful death, can also file a claim that includes that personal injury claim that was never filed. That can be included in their filing so that they could obtain the recovery that their loved one could have obtained while alive, the award for pain and suffering while alive. When a person passes away from a 9/11 illness, in addition to the money that they were entitled to, that they may have collected or may not have collected for pain and suffering in the past, they get a second award for pain and suffering because they passed away from a 9/11 illness. If there are dependents in the family, a spouse, children or others that were being supported by the deceased person, they are entitled to an award themselves directly. Typically, that's a $100,000 award for each of those people. The family is entitled to recover for what the VCF calls replacement services, meaning that if the person that passed away was helping around the house, was helping their dependents, doing things for them, shopping, cooking, doing chores, anything, driving them around, and now they're not around anymore to provide those services. You have to do it for yourself, or you have to hire, or you have to go without. Well, you're entitled to some compensation to pay for those things, and they call that replacement services. The VCF will also award families for the funeral expenses of burying or cremation, or whatever is the type of funeral that the family chooses to have. They pay for that too. And then, of course, as Lee was saying, if the person's life was cut short while they were still working, then the family is entitled to receive lost earnings to replace the lost earnings because the person passed away. All those are all categories of damages that make up a deceased claim. And Dana will discuss with you what we think are the prudent things to do in order to protect your family so that those benefits can be available for you should this ever happen.
Thank you, Dom. Michael asked the question, how does it feel to someone who has been diagnosed with a terminal illness to know that there is going to be something for their family? And it is sometimes their singular comfort as they're going through the worst time of their life. And when that diagnosis comes, they often ask us, what now do I have to do? What should my wife know? What should my children know? What should I do now? And the thing, if I impart one thing to you, it is that families must plan. It's going to be better. It's going to be easier. The compensation will come faster if families think about this and plan for it. So that's the first thing, is talk about this. Make sure that your family understands that the Victim Compensation Fund does have something called a deceased claim, and it is for families who've lost someone. Don't let them discover it on their own, because by that time it might be too late. They may have missed the deadline. Have that discussion. Get your proof of presence in order. Reach out to your witnesses. Fill out affidavits, get the employment affidavits, the employment verification letters. A lot of companies will go out of business by the time these affidavits are needed. Don't wait for that, and don't leave it to your family, who is often not in the best position to determine who the best witnesses are and to gather the proof of presence. And a lawyer can help you. A lawyer can help you to put that proof of presence together, even when you're well, so that it's there for you and there for your family when it's needed. The other thing is so important is get a will. Everyone should have a will, and for all of us in the 9/11 community, it is especially important. It's going to make the VCF process for your family go more smoothly. You will get to name your executor, and the executor is the person who's going to have the right to bring the Victim Compensation Fund claim. You can decide who that's going to be. If you don't have a will, it's going to be according to statute. And that may not be the best person. There is a much lower likelihood that there will be restrictions on your representative if there's a will. Restrictions mean that the representative has to return to court, sometimes multiple times, in order to get the Victim Compensation Fund award paid out. And that means substantial delay. And when a family has lost a loved one, that delay really matters. They don't need compensation 2 years from now. They need compensation now. So that is why having a will is extraordinarily important. You want to have frank conversations with doctors about what should be on the death certificate, because your family will also have to prove that you died from a 9/11 related disease. And there are some times when that's very straightforward, and there are some times when it's not. So there are times when the death certificate may list one cause of death, say heart failure. It's not covered, not right now anyway. So if a secondary cause is a respiratory illness or some cancer, you want to explain to the doctor why it's very important that that be documented. So those are some of the things that we tell families and we do to make sure that the people we represent have that peace of mind.
Dana, thank you. I did want to ask, because one of the questions that I often get from, and it's mostly widows, because we represent so many firefighters and police officers who are men who pass, but one of the common questions I get is, oh, I can't afford a lawyer. Can you explain what the government did to allay this concern for the 9/11 community?
Right, so not only, are people thinking about the legal fees that they might have to pay for the lawyer who represents them to the Victim Compensation Fund, there are legal fees that can be associated with the estate work that you need to get appointed in order to bring this claim in the first place. What the VCF has done is limited attorney's fees to 10% of the award. That means that there can't be anything extra to get you appointed. There can't be anything extra in order to return to court if that's necessary to have the award distributed. It is 10% of the award. If there is no award, there is no legal fee. And so there's really no reason not to seek out the help of a lawyer.
Thank you, Dana. And one last thing, Dana mentioned how important it is to get a will and a healthcare proxy. We feel so strongly about this that we do it for free for our clients. Because I'll tell you, part of it's a little bit selfish. After 9/11, after the Deutsche Bank fire, we were involved in so many disputes among family members, all who loved the person who died and may have loved each other at one point before money became an issue. But it's just so unnecessary to put your family through a fight when you can do a nice, easy, simple will and choose who's going to be the executor of the estate, who are going to be the beneficiaries. Don't leave it up to your family to fight about this. Please take advantage of our offer. I'm sure there are other firms. I don't know if other firms that do it for free, but there are plenty of good lawyers out there who do estate work. Take advantage of it.
And Michael, adding on to that, one of the things you should know is that some part, not all, but some part of the award is going to be distributed through the will. And so you will get to choose where that part of the award goes. There is some part of the will that is meant either for some part of the award that's meant for a specific person, some part that's wrongful death damages that's distributed according to the wrongful death laws, but some part of it will pass through the will. And that is up to you. You know what's best for your family. And in understanding how to plan for your family, you have to know what they will be entitled to and how it's likely to be distributed.
Yeah, well, thank you for adding that. And you know, the sad reality of it, maybe it's human nature, but when hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars are at stake, some of these cases, that's what we're seeing these awards, especially for young people who died, who were continuing to work and had huge lost income claims. That sometimes brings out a little bit of the ugliness in human nature.
Michael,
yes, Dom.
Sorry, I just want to punctuate one thing that both you and Dana just said, and it has to do with the proof of presence. Dana mentioned the importance of getting a proof of presence together. I just want to point out that here we are, it's 2020. It's never going to get easier to get that proof of presence in order. It's only going to get harder. People's memories fade, people move away, people pass away, and the proof of presence is often the single greatest obstacle for either a personal injury or a deceased claim with the VCF. And if you're healthy today, now is the time to get those proofs of presence in order. When we've mentioned several times during this presentation that the VCF calls for 2, and that's true. Two is what they require. But you know what? If you can get 3, if you can get 4, get them. Get the 4 proofs of presence, get them now, show them to a lawyer. Make sure that they are in order, that they would satisfy the VCF, because this is the most important part of the process and the hardest one to prove.
Well, thank you. The perfect segue to the last slide, which is what should you do now? Obviously, register for the health program. Number 2, register for the Victim Compensation Fund, even if you're currently healthy, because at that point, you've locked in the date. And if, God forbid, down the road you get sick, you or your family members don't need to be worried about, oh, I got to register within the deadline. So take care of that now. The 3rd bullet point is what Dom was just referring to. Even if you're currently healthy, it's like a life insurance policy. Get that proof in order. You can either give it to a law firm that'll file it for you, and it's there on the government's website. God forbid you ever get sick. But even if you, as Liam was saying earlier, even if you just have GERD or sinusitis, register, get your proof of presence. One of the things that Lee was referring to, Lee, I'll let you be the nag about this 4th bullet point.
Yep. So yes, see a dermatologist. It's the number one aspect that I tell every single one of my clients, people that just call with questions. I speak to thousands of people literally in a week, even if they're perfectly healthy. And I say, get a skin check, get a full body skin exam so you can protect yourself and make sure that you are covered, because this is when the skin cancers are rising. That's why the fund has been extended, because these cancers are developing now. It takes this long for it to show, and this is why we want to protect yourself. But one other aspect I wanted to touch upon Dom's point about proof of presence is we've been doing this so long that I am accumulating a database full of employment records to make sure that in 2035, God forbid something happens to somebody, we have mapped out the proof of presence for employers, because as Dana was saying, employers shut down. Maybe the company you worked with on 9/11 doesn't exist anymore. But the best part about the Victim Compensation Fund is the appeal process. We appeal claimants' denials for presence. We go in front of hearing officers and we appeal them and get them found eligible, because many times testimony is what matters. You were down there caught in the dust cloud, commuting, your testimony, and we will fight for you to make sure you are heard and that your story is there so you can move forward on this process. Like Dom was saying, presence is an obstacle, but we know how to get through it, and we have the database to know, number one, if your award is fair that you get, but number two, how your presence was mapped out on the day and the 8 months that followed.
Great, thank you, Lee. So can we go to Hillary now? Hillary, were there any questions that people have submitted? Can you
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So we have a few questions here. We can start with this one, which is for both the Victim Compensation Fund, the VCF, and the health program. So how long does the entire VCF and health program process take in general?
Well, Liam, I'll let you address the health program part of it.
Yeah, so when you apply to the World Trade Center Health Program today, and assuming that you have all of your supporting documentation in place and it's submitted, it takes about 4 to 5 weeks, possibly even longer. I know you guys could tell me better than I could, but in my experience, it takes about a month for the health program to get back to you to determine whether you've been enrolled. Once you've been accepted into the program, you can schedule your first monitoring exam with the doctor, and hopefully that will not take time, but some of these clinics do have some wait times and have historically been that way. So it might take a few weeks to get an appointment, but once you get an appointment, the ball really starts rolling where you're able to get your condition certified, and I will let Michael or Lee tell you how long the process goes for VCF.
Go ahead, Lee.
So for, like I said before, everyone has an individualized situation. It could be terminal. Some people just started the World Trade Center Health Program process. Some are in the program already and have never joined the Victim Compensation Fund. So it is for everybody. But usually for the Victim Compensation Fund, we see claims be awarded between 8 months, a year, a little over a year. Sometimes it takes longer to get presence documents, but the Victim Compensation Fund has been processing claims throughout this whole time. They never shut down once during going on, so they are processing, but it does depend on your individual situation. But it is not like a regular lawsuit where it could be dragged out for 5, 6 years, even more. So, this is really where we encourage everyone to join the program.
Hillary, next.
Yeah, so we have a question from the audience here. She says, I am already your client. I am a certified survivor and I'm in the World Trade Center Health Program. I have submitted my proof of presence documents, employer letter, 2 affidavits by May 2020. How long does it take to hear from the VCF once a claim is filed? I think Lee kind of just addressed that, but I wanted to make sure that this woman knew.
So just to reiterate, once everything is submitted, and it sounds like you have submitted everything, so you're going to be in good shape. And assuming you've already been certified by the health program, it generally takes 12 to 15 months to get an award. The exception being what Lee referred to earlier is if, God forbid, you're diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, your doctor says unfortunately you're terminal, we can expedite the claim and get you an award in 2 weeks. And that's what we want for all of us. God forbid that ever happens. All right, next, Hillary.
So we have another question from a client we all know and love. I won't say his name, but he knows us. So he says, Lee has brought me all the way through the VCF and World Trade Center Health Program, including my award. In regards to my eventual passing, does my wife only need to call your firm to handle a wrongful death claim if applicable? Or is there anything else I need to plan for that has not been already done?
Well, I don't know who it is, even though you'll tell me later, I'm sure. But assuming you have a will, all your spouse has to do is call. But please don't wait. If you've been diagnosed with a terminal illness, please call us so we can talk to you, because we don't want to hear it just from your wife. We want to talk to you and tell you that everything's going to be okay. And we'll take care of your family. Anything else?
Our next question is, someone I know died in 2008 of prostate cancer. I know he worked near the World Trade Center towers. Is it too late for his family to apply?
Dom, would you take this?
It is not too late. As I was saying before, the deadline has been extended to next July, July 2021. It is not too late. That family may file a claim now.
Yeah, and by the way, I have to give credit to Rupa Bhattacharya. She's the special master of the Victim Compensation Fund. When we got this bill extended last July, she realized how many people must have missed the deadline because either they didn't want to take money away from responders or they didn't know about it. So she extended this till next July for all those people, all those family members who lost their loved ones after, in the last 15, 20 years. So take advantage of this, please. Hillary, anything else?
Yeah, we have a couple specifically about the World Trade Center Health Program. If I join the World Trade Center Health Program, can I keep seeing my personal doctor?
Liam?
Yes, you definitely can see your personal doctor. There's no restrictions on that. This is for 9/11 related conditions. So you have to get your conditions certified with the World Trade Center Health Program, but you can still see your normal doctor for any other conditions. So it doesn't, interrupt that care. This would be a separate process.
Liam, am I right though? And what I'm saying now is that let's assume you really love your pulmonologist who treats your asthma. You can continue. Your private health insurance would pay that doctor, but once you're certified with asthma, then the health program will pick up all the co-pays and deductibles. Is that right?
I believe that is correct. Yes.
Good. Okay, great. Next.
Okay, we have a follow-up question from another client. I have COPD, which was not diagnosed until 2 years ago when I was 74 and already retired from corporate work. I was teaching yoga until March 2020 when COPD exacerbation made it too hard to teach. How large an award shall I expect?
Well, I think a lot of it's going to depend on your tax, on the taxes, on your taxable income that you declared, because what the government does, remember, the Department of Justice is administering this. They're going to look to make sure that you declared this income to the IRS. And if you did, and you say, hey, I'm 70, but I intended to work till 75, you have 5 years of lost income. But you have to be able to prove that you were declaring the money you made as a yoga instructor. And by the way, I tip my hat to whoever you are. That's awesome that you're still teaching, or that you were up until recently. I know how much you must miss it, and I feel for you.
We have another question. What if my cancer was diagnosed in 2018? Are there restrictions on diagnosis dates?
There are. They're called latency periods. But as long as, if it was a blood cancer, as long as it was diagnosed more than 6 months after 9/11, there's a presumption it was caused by the toxic exposure. As long as your thyroid cancer was diagnosed more than 2.5 years after 9/11, again, a presumption. And for the other 66 cancers, the presumption is if it was diagnosed after 9/11-05, that's just 4 years after the towers collapsed, all those cancers are considered related. You don't have to prove it. You don't have to have doctor's letters. As Dom said earlier, a lot of doctors don't realize the connection, and they certainly don't recognize there's a presumption linking all these cancers. But you know what? In all cases, reach out to an attorney who does this all the time. Reach out to NICOSH, who does this all the time, and they'll give you the straight answer.
One thing I want to add is the only way the World Trade add new conditions is if they have more members and more individuals in the 9/11 community join. That's why if you're healthy, sick, if you were in the exposure zone, we encourage everybody to join the World Trade Center Health Program. Michael said only 5% of the survivor community is in the World Trade Center Health Program right now. Compared to the first responders, 5%. They need more survivors in the program so they can have more data to add more conditions and accurately plan for the future. So I encourage everybody to please join the World Trade Center Health Program and also register for the Victim Compensation Fund.
Lee, that's a perfect segue to the last thing I want to say. We're pushing up against an hour now, and I know that that's about everybody's attention span. So I just want to say thank you so much, Elizabeth, for inviting us to do this. I want to thank all of you for listening. And the message today is spread the word. Even if you're taken care of, even if you're totally healthy, take care of yourself and do what you're, as John Stewart says, access what you are entitled to. So if you have any follow-up questions, please go to 911victims.org. You can call us at 212-385-8000. Liam, would you like to give NICOSH's number and website URL?
Yeah, definitely. So NICOSH.org. Also, I'm available, 212, I'll put it in the chat box too, 212-227-6440, extension 21 goes right to me, and I can help you with your application process and your supporting documentation.
Thank you so much for all of you for being here. This information is truly invaluable. We're going to send out in a thank you email tomorrow. You'll all get all the contact information again, so you don't have to worry about missing it. So thank you for being here and sharing this information. Thank you all for joining us this morning. And I wish you all a wonderful day and stay safe and stay healthy.
Stay safe, you bet. Take care, thank you.
Bye-bye.